And we are live.
Hi.
Hello, viewers. I am here with my third live. Oh my goodness. I cannot believe this is my third live. I thought I would only do this one time and well, that was nice. But no, I'm excited to be doing my third live. I have Stephanie with me from
Hi.
Teaching Stephanie.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Yes. So if you are joining in on the live, make sure to say hello in the chat. And if you have any questions for us, right, say that in the chat too. We'll be happy to answer that during the live. And also, in case you're watching the live and you're not aware, or the replay for that matter, whatever suits you fancy, I'm also recording this for a podcast format. So that way, if you're like, I don't want to watch, two people talk, like I don't mind listening, but I don't want to keep my YouTube up, so I am doing this in a podcast format too, and it's on a program called Anchor. So Anchor is a free podcast recording app where you can upload all of your podcasts unlimited as much as you want, and it's really super easy to use. All right. And then I will put that link down below in the description box so that way you can listen to the replay if you don't want to watch us.
Awesome. That is so cool. I'm a
Yeah.
podcast person, so I
So
love
yeah,
that.
like I knew there would be people out there that are just like, I can't really like watch lives, and
hmm
like either I'm at work or I'm at a job where I can't just stare at, the screen and watch it. So I'm
Right.
like, let's be accommodating to everyone as much as
Yes.
possible.
I love that. I love that. It's very teacher minded of you. Like, okay, I've got to
That is
differentiate
fair.
that instruction for every person. I love it.
Mhm. Yes, as long as we don't repeat ourselves, then I think we're good.
Awesome. I know, really. Yeah. What did you say?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, for the 10th time today.
It's always the kid that wasn't paying attention that you're like, I knew I was gonna have to say this again.
Mhm. I feel like that's every kid to some extent, that
Oh,
it's like,
yeah.
look, I'm only
Yep.
going to say this once, so make sure you pay attention. And like you say the clearest instructions possible, and there's still someone, what are we supposed to do? It's
Yep,
it's still the same online as it is in person, in
it
case
is.
there's any brick and
There.
mortar teachers out there watching and
Oh, yeah.
thinking like, I bet online teachers don't have to deal with this. No, we the only difference is
Yep,
that it really truly is just online.
yep,
You know,
yep.
like
My
it doesn't
sister
matter if
said
it's a
yeah.
lesson, either by, the state or if it's your own, like they're still going to be like, what are we supposed to do?
Exactly, exactly. My sister said, "The difference is you get a mute button." I wish I had a mute button in her in-person brick and mortar because she's
Yeah.
like, sometimes I'm like, "Okay, mute.
Yeah,
Time to mute."
and it's so weird. I don't know what kind of online teachers do this, but there are some online teachers that will kick their students out, like put them back into the waiting room if they're like
Mm.
really disruptive.
Oh, wow.
And
I
I'm just
haven't hit that.
me, I'm over here like, nope, nope. I'm gonna have a parent who's gonna complain if I ever do that.
Yeah.
Like,
I
I
no.
you are bold and you are brave to
Yeah.
do that. And
I I think, uh, that comes down to behavior management and having a plan in place of when they do this, making sure you know what you're gonna do because it'll happen. You'll have that kid that just keeps talking or they keep saying naughty words or they keep not
mhm.
listening, whatever it is, and you just keep that plan in place, and when they see that you're like, "Nope, this is the next step," they're like, "Oh, she knows what she's doing. I can't mess with this teacher." And it just that comes down to having a good plan in place of what you're gonna do with
I
those behaviors.
Although I will say, I think the whole, like, kicking them out and putting them back into the waiting room, like, on Zoom, I think that would probably work better for, like, older kids.
Right.
and not
Yes.
necessarily younger kids. Because I teach the younger kids, and I know if I ever did that, like that would be a huge no-no to parents because 'cause they're
No,
just like,
that
"They're
me
young,
too.
come on, don't you know that?"
Right, right. Same
So
for me. Yes. I can see the older students, okay, you're going out here and that's the behavior
mhm.
management, but those little kids,
So, because I
they
happened
would
to think that, I was just like, that would not vibe so well with younger kids.
their little
'Cause I
hearts would
mean
break.
yeah, and I mean, I think I even had to mute a friend one time, and they were completely heartbroken, and I'm just
Yes,
like, "I'm sorry, but
exactly.
I was clearly giving out instructions, and you were screaming at the
I know.
computer.
It's that's the hardest
Am I
thing.
supposed to just tolerate that and be okay
I know. I try to give warning and like, okay, if we have more interruptions, it's going to stop that flow of learning that we have. So we got to be on mute or control our voices. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to put the whole class on mute. And then if it still goes, I'm like, and Kelsey, I'm going to put you on mute so that they know, oh, she was talking about me.
Mhm.
Sometimes they just don't get the hint. They're like,
Right.
yeah, this class is noisy. You're like, it's you, you.
Wonderful. So, to kick us off on this live stream and the podcast, depending on if you're listening or if you're watching or watching the replay, like I said, whatever you fancy, I thought we would start out learning about uh, teacher Stephanie and teaching Stephanie. So, this is your time to tell us about yourself.
Awesome, awesome. So I am somebody that always knew I was going to be a teacher. I was like grew up in kindergarten, went and my mom was a teacher and was like, "Oh, I'm going to be a teacher when I grow up." And I went to all through school knowing like I'm going to be a teacher. You get to be a scientist, an artist, a mathematician, like all the cool jobs are in one thing in teaching. So I always knew I went to college knowing exactly what I was going to do, which I was shocked when people are like, "Oh, I don't know what I'm gonna major in." I was like, "How do you not know? I've known since I was 5 years old." And so, I always knew I was gonna be a teacher. I went to school, got my elementary ed degree, and, taught for 1 year as a 3rd grade teacher and loved it. I told my students every day, "You're the best class in the whole world. Do you know that? You're the best class." And I still think that. I think about all their little individual names, and I have a picture behind in on the other wall that I'm looking at of that class because they were just so special. And I had my first son during that first year of teaching, and I was, like, torn. I wanted to stay home with him, but I still wanted to teach, and I ended up staying home. I was like, "You know what?
Mhm.
These years are so precious. I'm gonna stay at home, but I'll go back. I'll go back to teaching." And during that time when I was staying home, I found online teaching. So I started with VIP Kid, and I've still been contracted with them. I'm still contracted with them, but last year started with Outschool and loved it because I actually love designing my own curriculum, lesson
Mhm.
planning. Um, in fact, before I started online teaching, I, for fun, would like make lesson plans for my son's little Joy School group where it was like just moms that were like, okay, we'll like do a little homeschool and they'll come to our homes and just do preschool. And I was like, would you guys care if I did lesson plans? And they were like, sure. That's really weird. And I was like, no. And I was like, do you, because they didn't know what to teach. They were like, should we like do letters, do this? And I was like, would you care if I made like a whole curriculum map and they gave us all lessons? They were like, oh, you can do that? That would be awesome. So I'm weird. I like lesson planning. It's like makes sense in my brain. But once I found out I could teach online, one, and create my own lessons without school, I was like, oh, this is a game changer. I'm so excited to be able to do that. So that's been awesome. And I've even been able to help other teachers create their lesson plans too. So that's been really cool.
Yeah. So that is the theme of our live stream today. If anyone hasn't noticed, it's going to be over lesson planning and lesson planning for in-person and online teachers, I think. I mean, they're pretty similar in some
Yeah.
respects, but I mean, we're also going to talk a little bit about those differences too, because I know when teachers hear of lesson planning, in their minds, it could either be like, "Ooh, lesson planning," or it could be like, "Ugh, lesson
Yeah.
planning."
Yes, and I
I
think yeah, the big thing with VIP Kid was you didn't have to do that, and
Right.
I liked that too. I liked just showing up and being like, "Okay, this is what I'm teaching today." I didn't have to do any of that. I could just teach, and that's where I want to spend my time. So my goal is always that teachers will be like, "I have my plan, and now I can just go with it." I don't have to keep, like, doing more and more and more. I've got the plan, and we just go and teach now.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that's
I
the
mean, I
big
guess
thing.
that is some nice benefit for online teaching too, especially even if you're still writing your own curriculum, like once you have it, you have it.
Right.
And that's it. There's not anything that you have to lesson plan every week, you know.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
so that might be the next question for us, right? So is planning for online lessons different from in person, and do you feel it's easier or more difficult to
So,
lesson plan online?
yeah, so I don't know if it's easier or difficult, but it's different. It's certainly different and in some aspects it is easier. Like we said, you can reuse that stuff over and over and over again and you're good to go. In other aspects, it's more difficult. I can't sit down with them with a worksheet or show them how to fold the paper
Right.
and like help them with those things that especially when you're creating something, like you're doing a painting and their camera's off or, those things, it can be more difficult. But, it's certainly different and you have to adjust, but there's still you're teaching kids. So
Right.
if you've taught in the brick and mortar, you can take those things that you know and you've taught and those lesson plans you have and convert them to online.
Right.
It's you can still do worksheets if that's what you wanna do. You can still use presentations, you can still do a lot of the things that you used and do it online. And I think because of the last year, so many teachers have had to, like, jump into the deep end of, "How do I make this accessible for online students?" That now I'm like, "You're ahead of the game." Like, I had to learn all this as I was going for years and years and years, now you're in. You're in with
Yeah.
me, and you know what to do to make it accessible for those online students. Come and teach online, like,
Right.
you know what to do.
Yeah.
So, they've had to really adjust and learn those things.
And I think there is sort of a negative light to online teaching, for at least the public school teachers, because I know for them, if they hear of like asynchronous learning or having to do their classes online or have a remote day of work on the computer, they're just like, "Ah, gag."
Right.
Like, I don't want any part of that. And like, here's us, like, we're doing this as our jobs, and we're like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like,
Right.
what do we say to, one thing that kind of runs in my mind is like, what do we say to these, like the teachers that are still brick and mortar teachers, like how to give off a positive light to online teaching?
I think the beauty is that you want a I'm trying to think of the fair and free public education, FAPE. And this makes that more accessible for students. If they can't come to school because of whatever reason, it makes it accessible to them. And that's the really cool thing. It also, you can do so many interventions with those kids that might need help in math or might need help in reading. You can do those interventions like my classes in math. I could do that with those kids that are struggling with multiplication. I can get them up. And so that's the positive light is that, you know, we can't have tons and tons of people in the school because they don't have a classroom and we don't have, enough supplies for them and we don't have all these things. But you can bring in all these online people that are working from home like me and do intervention. So online teaching is amazing for those things because
Mhm.
it's allowing for so much more help for those kids, and that's what it comes down to is we wanna help the kids. And
Right.
so and whether you're in person or you are online, we're all doing the same thing. We want those kids to succeed, so that's the
Yeah.
joy of it.
Yeah. And I think another thing to kind of go off on another tangent in a way, there's some things that come off of like, oh, online teachers are not real teachers. And I'm over here like, whoa, hold the brakes. Wait a minute. A lot of us teachers that teach online now were brick and mortar teachers.
Yes,
And
yes.
we just are like, I still want to teach. I don't see
Uh-huh.
myself doing anything else other than helping kids and teaching kids. So if this means I have to do it online, then this
Right.
means I have to do it online. Like,
Exactly, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. For me, it was wanting to stay at home. For
right.
another teacher, several teachers I know, it was health concerns. They could not teach in the in-person classes.
Hmm.
Other teachers, they just want to teach online. They, like, prefer that avenue, and it is different, and,
Yeah.
I'll tell my son's teachers at school, I'm like, "It's a lot different than in person. There's a lot of other things that you deal with that I don't have to, like,
Hmm.
so and so took my backpack or,
Right.
recess duty, oh, I've gotta go out and do bus duty, I've gotta" all
Yeah.
these
I,
other
I don't I
things.
don't miss doing
No, I
Carline
know.
at all.
I
I
don't miss
don't.
that
I
either.
I don't, and I was always in the morning of Carlines, and so when it was winter and it was there were
Crazy.
some mornings we were in the single digits.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh,
it was
that's
awful.
crazy.
I don't miss that at all.
No. See, and that's where I'm like, when you get down to it, I'm teaching kids online, and I'm teaching them my classes at least are Common Core aligned, and there's still those things. So
Uh-huh.
it's still teaching. It's
Yeah.
just without, all those other things. They do need those things though, but
Mhm.
it's still teaching.
It's still teaching, and I think for us, because we primarily teach on out school, and so the classes that we offer are classes that kids want to take and not
Mhm.
feel like they're obligated to take or that they have to take because it's a requirement.
Right.
So I think
Yeah.
that's another difference too, is that the parents are essentially just following their child's desires and what they're interested in. So if
Right.
they're like, "Hey, like, if I wanna learn about the planets, let's find some planet classes."
Right.
And I
And
mean, and I know there's a difference when kids have to come in and they're just like, "My mom had to make me take the class." Like, that
Yes.
and it's just like, "Okay, it's okay. We're still gonna make it fun. It's alright."
Oh, yeah. I I have 2 so I teach 2 different things. I teach and I have still something on my hand, sorry. But 2 different things. I teach multiplication and mythological creatures. So totally different, but it's funny because parents will sign their kid wants to take the mythological creatures, and they go, "Only if you take the multiplication class." So they're like, "Oh, okay," and they find
Spooky.
out it's still fun. It's still fun to be in there, and they change their mind a little bit about math, and that's my goal is math is so fun. It's such a cool puzzle we get to solve, and you get all these neat tricks to learn, and it's a lot less skill and drill, a lot more like figuring out the puzzle,
Mhm.
and then they're excited about math, but the reward is now I get to do the fun class. And the difference between the 2 is the kids show up in that mythological creatures like, "I have a dragon and I wanna talk about a basilisk and unicorns," and the multiplication class, they're like, "My mom's making me do this."
Mhm. Yep.
Like, "You're still gonna have fun, I promise. It's gonna be great."
Exactly.
They are
Yeah.
so funny.
Yes. So if anyone out there, all right, if you're an online teacher and someone's saying to you like, "Oh, you're not really a teacher," don't listen to them. I think
Not
back to
true.
the see that toxic person and we're walking away.
Yes, exactly.
Like
If yeah,
it's like, no, 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 no. You're still a
no,
teacher. You're still
you
a
are.
teacher. And
You are.
I even found another teacher who labeled their profile on OutSchool like an assistant teacher, and someone said, "No, honey, you are a teacher.
Right.
You're
You're
not an
teaching.
assistant to anyone. You are the teacher."
Right.
Like,
And I think as a parent signing up for the classes, I'm looking for somebody to teach my son. I view them all as teachers. Whether you're
mhm.
teaching acting, you're doing YouTube, Minecraft, you're teaching them something. And that's
Yeah,
why I signed
you're
them up.
not an
So
assistant, honey.
don't think,
You
you
are the
know,
head honcho. You are the queen or
yeah.
king, however
Uh-huh.
you view yourself. Like, you're it.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
So, yeah. So, don't listen to that
The
toxic
toxic
positivity.
person.
Don't
We're
listen to
walking
them.
the other way.
Don't listen to them. Okay. So, how about since we are talking about lesson planning, why don't you share with us some of your strategies for effective lesson planning?
Yes.
What's that process for you?
So, what it comes down to is two different things. So, one, you want to find out what you want to teach, and then from there, you want to find out what your objective is for the class. So, to find out what you want to teach you, it's three parts. For the best lessons, at least on OutSchool, are three parts. So, you want it to have high interest on OutSchool, like there's just an interest for it. You can see a list of those things. I can't remember how to find it. I always just
It's a
Google
labyrinth
parent
to
topic
find it.
group
It wasn't
test.
as easy as it was
No, they
like
used
this
to email
time
it
last
and
year. And
yeah.
I know some of you may not know the whole thing on OutSchool or what OutSchool is, but when a lot of us had started, I'm sorry to intrude, but
No, you're
I
good.
have to
You're
share the
good.
story. It's juicy. So, first starting out, we would get an email like every week or every 2 weeks, something along those lines, and would be like 500 searches of what parents and teachers searched for, and they were very niche, very specific.
Oh yeah.
So it was like, oh, hey, I really know what's going on into their minds. And there was one particular email, I think it was sometime last year, like I think it happened in November, I believe, of last year.
Mhm.
There was well, the first one was really funny. It just looked like a cat walked over the keyboard of
It was
suggestions.
weird.
I was like, I would be interested to see which teacher would be willing to
Uh-huh.
teach a class like that. I would love to see what that would be.
They were
But
really
then,
weird.
yeah, but then it went scrolling down on the bottom, and there was a suggestion on how boys can kiss girls.
Oh,
Or it was like the other way around, like, or how girls kiss
somebody, yeah.
boys.
One
And
of
I was
those
just like,
kids was like,
I
I
was just
really need
like,
to know.
"Oh my, whoa, is someone really going to teach that I want
Yeah,
it."
we don't want to teach that one.
And OutSchool said, "Okay, we're gonna stop that."
Yes.
And then we started getting the more broad topics that was just like,
Right.
"Oh, okay,
Yeah. So you'll
cool."
see, like, for ages 3 to 5, there's high interest in shapes, letters, Minecraft, like those
Right, and
subjects, but it
it's
wasn't before it would be like how to throw ninja stars, like very
very, very niche, very
specific. Like
specific.
somebody had typed that in and they didn't have that class, so they
Or like, or
put in a request.
Hello Kitty phonics or something,
Right.
like very, very niche.
Mhm.
And now it's just so broad, and I'm like, I don't even know if my hammer's hitting the nail right now.
Right. Yes. And the cool thing, the old way was that you could click on that topic. So let's say it was mythological creatures and I was like, "Oh, I want to teach that." I would click on that, create a class listing, and it would send an email to the parents that had
That sent
requested
that
that. So
that
that was like a huge advantage because you're like, "I'm doing it. If you still
yes.
want to take that class, I'm doing it."
Yes, and for us that were
And it was
outschool
nice.
teachers, that was our advantage,
Mhm.
because my most popular class on there, the solar system, the reason it exploded was because of that old search thing where it said solar system for 5-year-olds. I clicked on that, created the class, and before I even taught my first class, it was looking like hotcakes.
Right.
And I think a lot of us were really sad because that was our advantage
Oh,
to
yeah.
getting enrollments and to getting traction of our profile and what we had to offer. And now
Right.
it's just I feel
It's
like we
gone.
don't really have that anymore, and it's really sad. It's depressing, and it's
Right.
like, well, I guess I'm just gonna try
I'm
my
gonna
best
figure it out. Yep.
because I
So,
see.
yeah, I think the parent topic request can help you out, but it's not something you have to have. Like,
Mhm.
it would be nice if it emailed everybody again, but it's not there anymore,
Right.
so it's okay. Just go in and see, like, oh, are there still, parent requesting those things or kid
Mhm.
requesting? And I just Google "Outschool parent requests." That's how I find it still, and that's how I bring it up, but,
Do
again,
you ever get regular students that request certain classes from you?
I have students from my classes request the same thing, so it's always with multiplication. It's usually like, "Can you do, like, a more advanced multiplication or division next?" And I haven't yet done that because my classes are still full, so I'm like, "Yeah, eventually, maybe I'll get there." But it's good to have that feedback too, or they want private tutoring. They want, like,
Mhm.
"Okay, will you sit down with just my student?" My mythological creatures class, I did started an ongoing class from that because it was just a one-time class. It was my very first, like, okay, I've got to do something, and that's what I did. Was mythological creatures. I found the Outschool parent request, clicked that, and did mythological creatures, and it was really fun. They got to learn about 5 creatures and create their own, and I had a few students that would keep taking it. It was the same class. I was like, "You've already learned about these 5 creatures," but they liked creating their own at the end. And so from that, after like a month of them taking it 4 times, I was like, "Do your parents know this is the same class?" And I was like, "What? I have an idea." And I asked them, "Would you like this?" And they said, "Yeah, we'd love that." If I did an ongoing class and we learned about a new creature, just one new creature each time, but really like went into deep things on the story and the legends and all the cool things. And then at the end of that class, you get to create your own version of that one creature. Would you want to do that? And they said, "Oh, yeah." So the feedback from the students is huge. Once you get them in, you're like, "Oh, okay. Now I know what they're really looking for." And that's been huge.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, sorry, my 3 things, I kinda went off on, like, a tangent on the parent
We all
request,
did. Teachers do
but
that sometimes, it's fine.
so the parent request, you want it to be, like, what is in high demand for Outschool. You want it to be something that aligns with you, what you like. So, I like math, I like mythological creatures, that makes sense for me. What wouldn't make sense for me is, like, social studies. I'd be like, I'm not as confident in my history." Like, that would be not good for me, even though it would be high demand in Outschool. It's like, no, that wouldn't align there. And then the third component is you want it to be something the kids want to do too. So for my multiplication class, I know there are kids that are going to be like, "I don't like that, mama. I don't like math." So it's magic tricks with multiplication. They're going to be learning things to make it make sense in their mind, and it's gonna be fun. It's not
Mhm.
gonna be like, "Here's your worksheet, finish this, we gotta do this." It's gonna be learning tricks to figure out the problems, and
Yeah.
that's a little bit more appealing to them than just multiplication. "Here's your worksheet, ready, go." So that's what I those are the 3 components I do for figuring out what you want to teach. And then as far as making a lesson plan, you always start with the objective. Make sure that you have an objective of what you want to have the result be. So the students will be able to learn their multiplication fact 0 through 12. Or if you're creating something, the students will create a fall scene or whatever it is, have that in mind. What are they going to have at the end of this? And then start planning your activities from there so that they all align to that one goal. And then you'll feel really confident. If you start going with like a theme, if you were just like mythological creatures. That's it. Like you could go so many different places and it makes lesson planning really hard because you could do so many things with that one topic. But if you have an objective like mine was, I want them to learn about a few creatures and create one. Then I knew what to do. I was like, okay, now I know how I can, okay, these are the 5 creatures. I'm going to tell a story about them and let them tell me what they know. And then I'm going to read this story about a few more creatures. And then I'm going to give them some guidelines on how to create their own. And that made it so much more helpful to have the objective in mind because I knew exactly what to do versus like, well, I've got a cute background with some mythological creatures and I've got a story and then I've got this and then I can Google some things and if I know exactly like, okay, this is what I want them to end up with, I can run with it. So start with the end and go from there.
Gotcha. Yeah. Awesome. All
Awesome.
right. So, since we are still on the topic of lesson planning and the tangent about out school and some craziness there. So I think what are some insider tips that you can share with any teacher, about lesson planning? Do you have any tips or tricks to make it easier or to make it more manageable? What's your strategy?
Some inside tips. Basically, it just again start with the objective. So as far as lesson planning goes, I think if you were a VIP kid teacher or any of those ESL companies, a lot of people think the lesson plan is the slides that you teach when you're teaching with those companies, and that's not the plan. That's the materials. So the plan is much bigger than that because the
Mm-hmm.
students are coming with they did a video before that, right? They have a flipped classroom. They did a video before that. They come to you, and then afterwards they do something. So that's the whole plan of how they're going to learn a certain thing. But your materials are what you're teaching. So that's kind of the general tips. There is knowing like you have a bigger picture than just those slides. And so you're going to have a whole map of what am I going to teach? What am I going to do? And it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be we're going to learn letter A and we're going to talk about alligators. And then we're going to do an alligator dance. It doesn't have to be complicated, but you're going to have that plan and then have the materials to supplement in that plan. So um, don't feel like, oh, I have to have slides because that's the way I've always done it. I kind of thought that without school. I'm like, I don't even know how I'm going to interact with these kids without slides. And now I'm like, oh, I'm okay. I'll be all right. I know exactly what to do and how to interact with them. So
Yeah.
there's a lot more to the lesson plan than just slides or props, those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bigger picture.
Yeah. Definitely. It kind of got me thinking a little bit because I remember I had started with VIP Kid before out school, and I had to have so much props, like bukus of props.
Oh yeah.
And I kid you not, I have it here. It took me almost 8 months to find like the chicken and an egg. And I know you're laughing, you know exactly what lesson I'm talking
Exactly.
about.
Yes.
And
Because they're like, what? Yeah.
because
That
the whole chicken and the egg lesson on VIP Kid is like you have to have literally a chick comes from an egg. Like you have to
right.
physically have it to explain it to
You
those
do.
sweet kids in China
Yes.
in English, because otherwise they're just like, what?
They're going, I was gonna say, I bet I have my egg over here somewhere.
And it's like, no, this is not for my child for Easter.
Exactly. I actually stole one of the Easter eggs from my kids, like, okay, I'm gonna need this because and I like had it as a reward too, like, look, you got another
Mhm.
egg. Here you go. But
Only
just so they
only
would get
VIP
that.
Kid teachers, would be like, hey, what you making with that? A reward chart.
It's a reward chart. Another reward chart, my friends.
And
But
then I had on OutSchool, I had started out with separate props at first because
oh,
I was
okay.
sort of still like in VIP Kid land of like needing props to to show students. Like, even though I was not slowing my language or anything with these kids, I knew they spoke English. I still was like, oh, well, I'm still just going to show props because I think the kids might like that rather than staring at a screen. But like, the
Right.
reality is, like, I guess kids love screens. And so they think the slides are more appealing and interesting than me holding up a sun that's like
Right.
pictures from NASA, but it's like a big magnet. Like, they don't
They
care
were
about
like,
that. They would
"Eh."
rather me find a Google search picture of the sun and slap it on Google Slides or Canva. And
Right.
that's it. That's more appealing. And I'm just like, okay,
Okay, now we
that
know.
they're the same kids who like rubber bands and boxes as opposed to the actual toy itself.
Right, exactly. They were like, "Can I have the box that toy came in? That looks great."
I'm like, why are we glamorizing toys then if they don't want they're only gonna
Yes,
play for 10 minutes and then they're done.
yes,
So so
so true.
so I'm like, okay, fine, and it's easier for me because if I ever have to travel anywhere and teach, I have the slides right there that I just
Right.
pop up, ready to go, good
Yes,
to go. We're golden,
exactly.
you
I've
know?
had that myself where I'm like, "Okay, I have the slides, I'm good to go." And I was talking to you before this about my computer crashing, and I had to teach from my phone, and I was like, "Okay, here we go." So I learned how to, um share my slides from my Zoom call on my phone. So it's the same, like you can share pictures. So I downloaded my slides as pictures and then shared just the specific slides I wanted. I was like, "Oh, I don't want you to see like pictures of my kids at Halloween." Like, okay, here's this. But we did the slides. The one thing that was really hard was I couldn't see them and they couldn't see me when the slides were up. So that was tricky, but I was like, okay, we're just gonna keep going. I could still draw on the slides like I needed to, um, and still share that material. And then the second half of that lesson was on Nearpod. So that made it okay, like, okay, they could still go over to Nearpod and look at it that way. But that was my backup plan is I'll just put the slides on the Nearpod lesson and let them watch that way and it'll be okay. But sharing my screen works great from my phone. So if you're ever in a pinch, know like,
Yeah.
okay, I've got my slides. I can do it from my phone.
Yeah.
It'll
And
be
so
okay.
when you're an
Yeah.
online teacher, like, I've done that before with VIP Kid because thank God, actually, I used my husband's old tablet for a couple of instances when the MacBook would either be like updating or just decide I'm not going to work today, whatever
Right.
reason, I would like quickly grab the iPad and quickly get on. I'm like, I'm here. Hello, hello, hello.
Yes. And
You get that panic high.
yes. I tell people all the time, if you're coming from VIP Kid over to OutSchool, you're a great teacher already because you know you have to show up on time. You know you have to be there the full time. You know like how to be bright and sunny and how to interact, like go close and far away from the camera, where to look, all those
Mhm.
things because they've trained you. But don't panic like a VIP Kid teacher because they're not going to be so mean to you.
Yeah, I think
So don't worry so
I
much.
think I did actually read somewhere one of the rules about like when it's okay to be late and when it's okay to like leave early per out school terms.
Right.
So I think like if your class started at 10 a.m. and you came in at 10:03, like that's okay. Somehow,
Right.
obviously 10:06 is a no-no.
Which
You,
is funny though because as a VIP Kid teacher, I'm like, oh, 10:03, like 3 minutes. Whoa.
like there've been teachers who were late for 5 seconds and they would get a
Right.
teacher no-show. And it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, it's just five
Right.
seconds. It's right on the nose.
Oh, yeah. So,
Like, what
that's what I mean.
the
These
heck?
VIP Good teachers, you have no idea. You're a great teacher because they've trained you. They've trained you how to be on time,
I
how to
I
start.
I still go
So,
in like a minute early.
me too.
on my
I
out-school classes because I'm just because of that VIP kid anxiety a little
uh-huh.
bit. Just like,
Yeah,
okay, I just don't want a teacher no-show.
I
That's
don't want that.
what's
Yeah,
going on
don't wanna get in
here.
trouble, and, um, a lot of my friends that are applying to outschool are like, "What happens if this? Oh, no, what do I do for" "I have to cancel, what's gonna happen?" And I go, "You just message the parents and say, 'Would you like to reschedule or would you like a refund?'" And they're like, "That's it?
That's
That's
it.
it?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah,
Outschool
people get it."
will not penalize you
Yeah,
for that. As long
and,
as there
like
was a mutual understanding too. Like,
right, and I think I've had times where I've missed the class, I've overslept, and I'm like, "I missed that class. What do I do?" And I messaged the parents, I refunded them, I said, "I can still teach the class if you want to," and Outschool said, "Yeah, don't let it happen again." Like, "Don't do that
just
again," but
casually,
yeah,
like,
and I'm, like, panicked, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm
yeah.
fired.
Because I
That's
mean,
it."
there's no official contract with Outschool because you truly are an independent contractor with
Right.
them. So, like, it's your business, it's your choice when you wanna teach, how long you wanna teach it, and if
Yeah,
everyone has a mutual understanding that you're sick
right,
and you're not gonna be able to meet that week, okay, great.
right, and I think
Then there's no issue. It's
right, and the natural consequence is because of that, I might get a bad review. That was my fault, but that's what might happen if you oversleep, so don't think, "Oh, there's no consequence." It's like, no, it's scary still because you could have a negative review and people will see that and parents still might be upset. My parents weren't. They were like, "Oh, it happens. No worries. Thank you for making it right." And I think that's the biggest thing is just
yeah,
make it right
just make it
and
right, yeah,
yeah, you'll be
definitely.
okay, but it's a little bit different from teaching with VIP kids.
Yeah, yeah, def gosh, there are still some laughable moments that I just don't really think about anymore because when I had first started teaching on Outschool, I did come in like 5 minutes before,
Yeah,
like, waiting for the kids, to come on and because of that, and now it is literally, like, a minute or 30 seconds before, so I'm like, "It's growth. I'm growing.
yeah.
I'm getting better."
My first classes without school, I was, talking too slow. I was like, "Okay, are you ready to do multiplication?" And I was, like, pointing, and they were like, "Why are you talking like that?" It's like, "I
I
don't
was like, "Oh."
know. I don't know how to talk online to, like, fluent English speakers." And they were once I got in the flow of, like, "Oh, I can just talk my normal pace." It was so funny, but I had just been so used to teaching in that pace that it was like, I gotta get out of this." But
Yeah,
the kids were like,
which
"Why are you
which
talking like that?
yeah,
Why are you
which
doing
I
that?"
think, I'm not sure if you have been hearing word of a new online teaching platform, called All School, which is similar to Outschool, but it's based off of Singapore.
"Oh,
And
okay.
and here's the thing, like, they were giving these passes to teachers who teach on Outschool and, like, have been teaching
Interesting.
on Outschool for a while because the purpose of All School is similar to Outschool, and
Gotcha.
that you could create your own curriculum and teach
Very cool.
students and all that jazz. But their hope also is not only you could write your own lessons, but you could teach other lessons or their lessons too.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
it's like the best of Outschool and VIP Kid put together,
I love that. That's
essentially.
awesome.
And I think the whole reason why All School did the Express Pass, though, this is where I was getting at, is because like in their intro videos and explaining to teachers like what they should do in their demo videos, like they strongly emphasize to just go against what they done for ESL online teaching companies. So
Ah,
no
okay.
TPR, you know,
Interesting.
ball, ball,
Yeah,
apple, like
right.
you are talking to native English speakers. Do not, use, well, sometimes I'll still cut my hand a little bit if I'm like, hey, I didn't quite hear what you said, but I'm
Right.
like, hey, I didn't quite hear what you said. Not like, again? You know, like,
Yes.
I said, "Hey,
Yes.
I didn't hear you. Can you repeat yourself?"
Right.
So, that's the difference is just not doing all VIP Kid or Go-Go Kid or Magic Ears.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
that's why that express pass was given to outschool teachers because it's like, you're exactly what we're looking for because not to use
You
TP
already know. Yeah.
and to actually speak to native English speakers,
Right.
and you've been doing that already.
Right.
So,
And a lot
it's
of
like,
I
that's
I've taught a
that's
lot of
fair.
yeah,
So,
I've taught a lot of students outside the US just because I teach in the early mornings, and that doesn't work for a lot of US students. So I've taught a lot of like in India, I've done a lot of the Middle East, I've done a lot of Taiwan. And so it's just interesting to see where these kids are at, but they're fluent English speakers. So I've never had to slow
yeah,
down and be like, okay, here's how we do,
yeah.
like
You know,
very slow. I don't have to
and I
simplify my language at all.
and my heart kind of flutters a little if I meet a child on Outschool, okay, and they would have names that you would see like on VIP Kid, like Apple or Cece or
Uh-huh.
Elsa, and
Elsa.
I would just be like, how's their English going to be?
I know. It's like,
And
okay,
I
I
would have
hope.
to say, like, a lot of them were like level 4 or level 5. So they
Okay.
actually were pretty
They were
good,
good. Yeah.
English speakers. And I'm just like, cool,
Yes.
awesome. I'm just teaching you slang at this point.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to teach you the fun stuff of, how
Right. Hmm.
native English speakers talk.
Yeah. But I
That's
mean, like,
awesome.
but they would also ask questions. Like, I know there was one little girl that came on this week for my space club, and it seemed like she was ESL student type of thing, but she was just like, she was over here like, how many moons does this have? Does this planet have? And I'm like, okay, so you're fluent enough to ask how many moons does
Right.
Jupiter have? So
Right.
that's pretty
That's
good,
it's
you
really
know.
good.
So, but I mean, like, but you could tell they were ESL and like they've done
Right. I have
like
a lot of
VIP
those
Kid or Magic
students.
Ears or something along those lines. And I'm just like, I think that's why you went with me because I said on there that I was an ESL teacher at one point. So,
Yeah, that's a good point for your profile to if you've taught English as a second language, put that on your profile because those
mhm,
students will sign up and go, "Oh, good, okay." So if I have a question, she's not gonna be like thrown like, "You should know this. You should know that," and they'll appreciate it.
right. This is the pro portion of the program where we talk about pro tips on how to be a great out school teacher.
Yeah. This is going pro right here.
Going pro. This is our jobs. This is what we do. And I mean, I know you don't technically do it full time, but it your only job, or do you do other avenues?
I do a lot of different things. So my full-time job is mom. I
Uh-huh.
That's like majority of my hours spent, but early mornings are teaching, and then nap time is spent creating lesson plans for other teachers. So I essentially am like a lesson plan copywriter. So I
Mhm.
create the whole class listing for you based off of what your ideas are, what you want to teach. We come up with a whole plan together, and then I create those lesson plans. So, um, for instance, this week I created one for my friend Mary, and we came up with a really cool Revolutionary War history,
Mhm.
and she's doing a choose your own adventure. So they get to come up with a character, and then they essentially go through all these choices, but it always leads them to like one event in this Revolutionary War. So like, oh, and now we're at the Boston Tea Party, and we're gonna do this, and then she
Yeah.
teaches them about the Boston Tea Party. But it's a really cool twist on history,
Yeah.
um, and something really fun. But she just needed help with, okay, I need to know how to do the class listing. I need to know how to really structure this because I'm new to Outschool. She was former VIP Kid teacher, and she's like, okay, I know all about this history, but I need help. And she's really cool in that she's like a former Freedom Trail tour guide. So she has a lot of knowledge on
Oh,
that. And I was like,
okay.
please go with that. Please, like
Yeah.
run with that knowledge. And she did. I'm so excited. So that's what I do in the afternoons. And then another side gig that I do is I actually work for Nancy Taylor, who's like was the VIP kid
VIP
model
kid
student. She was
person.
the one that
Uh-huh.
got me started, but I grew up with her and I actually work with her and doing teaching others how to build their brand on YouTube. So I work inside her membership and coach others on how to build a YouTube channel, how to grow a business from that. So I'm all over the place.
Yeah. So I got
Crazy.
in the comments from AM, I believe that's their um their name. It just said I just had an 8 a.m. Central out school class with a kid from Romania and he was somewhat fluent in English. So
Yes.
that's
Awesome.
interesting. I'm curious like if this was an ESL lesson or if this was just a standard whatever
Yeah.
their content
So
lesson
I've
is.
I've done the
So
same thing. I've taught a lot of kids in Europe, not just like in Great Britain, but I had one sweet kiddo from Portugal, and he was in my mythological creatures class and multiplication, and he was totally fluent. And he actually helped me in one instance come up with a better way to say um, one of the magic tricks I was teaching them. I was trying to show them, oh, with this, you want to do this, the fingers on the left and on the right. And it was confusing because my hands were different and it was just
uh-huh.
becoming really difficult for him. And he goes, oh, so the fingers that come before and the fingers that come after. And I was like, yes, exactly. So sometimes those kids, because they have another understanding of another language, they can give you better verbiage for how to explain something. And you're like, oh, yes, that's exactly
Mhm. Oh, so, AM responded, said it was a standard escape room class.
perfect. That's really
Very
cool. I need to
awesome.
get into
Yeah,
the
that's so
escape
awesome.
room.
Thanks for sharing that, AM.
Yes, and
Yeah,
that's so cool that they were able to join and totally take advantage of those classes. I think that's the
yeah,
beauty of teaching online too, is my reach is not just the
to the
kids
United
in
States
Plain
or
City,
to just the
Utah.
same
Yeah,
20 kids in the class. Yeah,
exactly. It's like I've taught the same kids in Australia and Taiwan and California, and we're all talking about the same thing. They all needed to learn multiplication, and
yeah.
it's pretty cool.
I think probably one of the cooler ones that I've taught, which the little girl that I had mentioned earlier that I had taught in the space club, I believe she I know it was in one of the Asian countries. I want to say Taiwan, maybe. I'm not sure. It's not China. I
Yeah,
don't believe it was China. I think it was, somewhere either like in South
over there.
Korea or Taiwan or Thailand. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah,
But I did
so cool.
teach a military family in Guam
Oh, wow.
one time and they're like, "Yeah, we're technically in the United States, but we're in Guam." And
Yeah.
I'm just like, "Cool."
That's
So,
that's another thing. You'll get a lot of military families that are living abroad, and they're
mhm,
like, okay, they do these classes in their school, but it's in French or it's in, and I'd like for
right,
them to have it in English so they can just really get a good
right.
understanding of this thing.
And
And
I
so,
I did teach a little girl who lives in Italy how to read in English.
how cool.
So,
What a
or at
neat
least the
experience.
beginning stages of reading and like decoding and so and
Yeah.
I'm just like it's like I can teach a kid how to read online,
Yeah.
you know.
It's a cool
I'm
superpower.
not trying to toot my own horn, but it
No,
can
but
be done.
I'll say, just in conversation all the time, I'm like, "Oh, one of my students was from Portugal, and we were talking about this," and people are like, "Portugal? That's so cool." It's just
Mhm.
a really cool thing to be able to quickly visit another country and like, "Oh, it's just a daily thing I do."
Uh-huh.
You take it for granted, but you're like
Yeah.
other people are so amazed, like, "You that's so cool," and
Yeah.
you have friends
Sometimes
all over the world.
there are a couple of instances I'll teach a later class, like 7, 8 o'clock at night. And that's where I will get a lot of like the Australian families
Yeah.
come
I've had
in. And my husband would be home from work then. And so then when I would log off, I would be like, was one of your kids from Australia or New Zealand? And I'm like, yep.
they were. Yes.
So I was
Yeah,
like, definitely. And it was so cool, like just to hear, like just to realize like your reach is so much further online.
exactly.
Just knowing that just makes the job so much cooler.
It is. It's
Knowing that,
really cool.
yeah, that even though you're sitting in a room with four walls, you're going beyond four walls
Oh, yeah.
for
It's
sure.
pretty cool. And it's really cool. I had one student doing my flex classes, and well, I've had lots of them do it, and they'll take pictures of like, the parents will take pictures of the student sitting at the computer watching my videos, doing the work. And one student, she was from Philippines, and she's, like, in this jungle, like,
Oh my
watching my
gosh.
and I was like, "That is so cool. Is that your house?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's just our front yard, like,
It's like
it's not that big of a
no big
deal," you
deal.
know? And I was like, "That's amazing." It just hit me how far you're going with these kids. It was like, "Oh, like, she's in the Philippines taking
Mhm.
a class of mine." It was so neat to see. I
Mhm.
loved it.
Yeah. So our jobs are cool. And
It's
like I
pretty
said, if
cool.
haters are over here being like, you're not a real teacher, you teach online. I'm like, well, there's a lot behind the scenes that you're not seeing, first of all.
Right. Yeah.
So,
And we're doing the same thing. We're teaching kids. That's the job.
mhm. That's it. That's it. We care about kids. We care about their education, so it's just a different way of going about it. It's just something that's not blasted on the media all the time.
Right. Yes.
So, so yes. Well, I think we're going to wrap up our time. So
Awesome.
Stephanie, thank you so much for
Thanks for
meeting
having me.
up with us. And don't forget, those that are still watching, this is also going to be in podcast format in probably about an hour or so on Anchor. That description is going to be in the description box below if you want to take a listen for the replay instead of just watching the replay, whatever you fancy. And make sure you follow Stephanie on Teaching Stephanie. That's on
Yeah.
your YouTube and Instagram, right?
Yes.
Is there
Yep,
anywhere
both of
else we
them.
can follow you?
I think that's it right now, just
Okay,
Instagram and YouTube.
cool. Teaching Stephanie, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And I think I put that in the description too. So that way
Perfect.
those of you lovely viewers and watchers can see that too. And then yeah, make sure you do subscribe our videos, like our videos, because our your support means everything.
Yes, and it's a
It,
great free way to support somebody is
mhm.
to like their videos and subscribe. It's such a
Subscribe,
easy
ask
way.
the questions, all
Yeah.
that jazz. Yes. So thank you so much. And then thank you for all of those that tuned in and shared
Yes.
and shared all your things. This was great.
Loved it.
All
So
right.
much fun. Thanks, Kelsey.
All right. Thank you.